Welcome back everybody to Hotrodguygarage. This is going to be another episode on the 96. But today I'm going to cover some of that stuff that a lot of you may be scared to fix. So stick with me through the intro and I'll be back. What's one of them things every Geo owner will eventually have to deal with? That's rust repairs. So, as I've told you before, the 96 has some crusty stuff on it, and the rear sway bar mounts need to be repaired. I'll jack the car up here in a moment and show you that. But today we're going to fix those rear sway bar mounts. It should be a permanent fix. It's not going to be an OE fix, but will be a good, strong, and stronger than factory repair. So let's get this car jacked up, and we'll go from there. But first, I made a little short yesterday, and I had somebody comment on something I added to 96. So I'm going to cover that right here before we get the car jacked up and go through the rust repair. So let me flip it around, and I'll show you. So guys, as you can see, I added some fender flares to the 96. Now these are just a cheap universal eBay fender flare. These things are everywhere. Best I can tell, there's like 3 different sizes of these. So I will post up a screenshot of the one I bought. I'm not sponsored by anybody. But these things, I was going to make a video on installing them. They are very universal and they do not fit all that great. As you know, this 96 is not in the best of shape, so it didn't really bother me. So these are the fender flares, and they do fit the Metro wheel well pretty well. I only installed these because I didn't like how the tires stuck out about that far out of the wheel well. So it gained me a little bit of tire coverage, and while also making the car look lower than what it actually is. So the big thing about the 96 Up cars, I didn't like how the tire pooched out in the back. So there they are. So that's about all I'm going to cover on those fender flares. How you mount your car is totally up to you. I literally just temporarily screwed these in with self-tappers. They do come with bolts and nuts. I will eventually, if I paint this car, I will pull these off and put nut certs in the body panels. That way they can be bolted on without having to access the inside of the panels. So for temporary, right now, this will work. So let's get this thing jacked up and take a look at rear sway bar mounts. And alright guys, I got this car jacked up. Now keep in mind this car has been hit in the rear end before, so it does have a little bit of collision damage also, which I'm not necessarily worried about. But as you can see, the driver's side sway bar mount is pretty bad. And our passenger side over there is completely missing. So we got to address this. Now the rest of the car is pretty clean up under here. Especially considering the crust in that sway bar mount. So basically guys, what I got to do, I got to get them mounts off there. Or at least the driver's side one. And I've got to get the remaining part of the passenger side one off. Hopefully I can take a chisel and just knock the spot welds loose. So today's video is going to be about fixing this. So I'm going to bring y'all along for the ride. I'm going to show you what I do. How you fix it, it will be up to you. But pretty much yesterday I preemptively come in here and made some 1/4-inch steel plates. Real easy to make with a drill and a cut-off wheel. So let's see how the day goes. And alright guys, usually when dealing with rusty bolts like this, and I can see that this one's probably going to be a problem, and this one may be too, and considering I'm going to remove this bracket anyway, I'm going to see if I can't just go ahead and break these bolts off. And sometimes you can, and sometimes you can't. So we'll just have to go from here and may have to cut them off. And I literally just grabbed the sway bar and pulled down, and it pulled that bolt out. But the one bolt that did come out, you can see it looks pretty bad and ugly. So at this point, our sway bars dropped down, and we got to get to removing these brackets here. So hopefully it'll come off pretty easy. Well, I finally got this side off with a combination of stuff. And I do have some holes to repair in the floor where I tore spot welds out of it. And I've got to straighten that floor out there too. But for now, I'm going to start working on this other side, guys, and I'll be back. Usually the easiest way to remove something like this is to drill spot welds out. If your car is just got a little bit of rust and you want to fix it, guys, just go ahead and drill spot welds out. If the mounts are as bad as these are, you're going to have to do some welding anyway. So I'm going to get this other side off over here, you know, this one right here, and I'll be back. And all right, guys, at this point, you better get your bottom sway bar brackets off as much as you can. So the next thing you need to do, you need to open your hatch, remove your spare tire and your jack and stuff if you have it. I know a lot of these cars by this time is missing all that stuff, but this one actually had all of it in there, surprisingly. So I'm going to flip it around. I'm going to show you what I'm working with on the inside here. Like I said before, keep in mind this car has been hit in the rear end, so it does have some kind of collision damage. So I'm going to have to try to go in here and flatten this floor out, which is not going to be a step in this how-to video, so to say. So I'm going to knock this floor back down. I'm going to show it to you first. And then I'll pop back in when it gets time to install these brackets and stuff. So stay tuned. So guys, I could go in here and kind of knock some of this stuff back down flat and level. But you can see where the spot weld holes are. There's a couple over here in the same location. But pretty much the sway bar sits right here in this area. Pretty much centered up with this brace right here. So I'm going to go in here and I'm going to get rid of some of, you know, this insulation stuff. And I'm going to clean this up a little better in here than I previously did. And I'm going to see if I can't straighten this floor out. And I'll be back. And alright guys, you want to put your sway bar mount and stuff back on there. Once you get everything sorted out, hold up in its rough position, and you can roughly mark your holes. I'll give you a drill hole for your plates. And alright guys, your holes are going to end up, after you drill them, they're going to fall somewhere in these areas right here. So what I used a step bit. I made them a little bit bigger than what I need so I can adjust them a little bit. Now I need to grab my welder and weld some of these little holes up that, you know, that aren't needed. Then we can get to actually fixing this thing. But first I got to fix this spare tire mount too. Just going to drill a couple little holes and re-spot weld it here, and we should be good. So with a project like this, you always hope for the best and plan for the worst. So the only good thing is I got most of that spare tire well beat back out in the shape that it should be in. It's not ever going to be a show car, but it is a lot better than what it was. So that's always the goal. If you don't have the means to make something a show car, at least make it better than what it was. So let's get back to work, and I'm going to spot weld these holes up, and I'll be back. So guys, it's going to be a long, tedious process to do this, so I'm going to get back to welding, and I'll be back here in just a few. Well, I got all the holes welded up, and I beat on the floor pan some more and got it mostly back straight. So I put a little seam sealer down on the seams and over the weld joints where I weld the holes up, just in case there's any little pinholes or anything. You don't want any holes to outside of your car, especially in the back half, because from your exhaust you get that carbon monoxide when you sit idle for any amount of time and get up in the car and actually kill you. So it's always good to make sure that y'all have all your body plugs and everything in your car. So I'll flip the camera around and I'll show you where I'm at the current moment. This seam sealer's got to sit about an hour before I can paint it. Then we'll come in here and we'll paint this floor, and then we can start putting the rest of the subframe, well, not subframe, sway bar stuff back together. And we should be good to go at that point. So I'll flip her around. So guys, while this looks pretty ugly back here right now, it is definitely a lot better than what it was. And I kind of went a little overboard with the seam sealer. I had a partial tube, and I need to kind of use it all. So there's not no holes right here. It was just kind of rough right there, and I just put some over it for whatever reason. And on the bottom back here, I got the bottom of the spare tire well somewhat reasonably cleaned up, and some seam sealer over the weld joints there. And I'll come in here and wire brush this some more here in a minute, especially back there where them sway bar mounts hit the subframe. So it's important, especially on something you're going to keep, that you try to kill every bit of that rust you can, guys. Now, there's going to be some that you can't kill, and it's just going to be the point where eventually stuff's going to have to be cut out and fixed. Fortunately, this car's not all that bad. It's just localized to a few areas, and they are fixable, especially at this moment. So, let's let this stuff dry, and I'll be back. And alright guys, I got some paint sprayed in here and down here. Well, it still looks pretty rough. I'll probably end up undercoating this under here, just you know, kind of make it look a little better from behind. So, that said, let's get let's on those pieces I made, and we'll go from there. And alright guys, so you can basket my ugly trunk floor for just a moment. I'll be in here. But what I done, like I told you before, I made these plates, these little 1/4 inch plates. And I used one of the old sway bar bushing brackets to get my dimensions here. So what I want to do, I found some 5/16 bolts that will be long enough to compress this bushing and everything and sandwich these two plates between the floor. So I drilled these holes. I use these. And what we're going to do, we're going to use these plates to drop through right here. So these are about 1 1/4 inch long, 5/16 bolt. They're not a hardened bolt. You could put a hardened bolt on this if you wanted to, but ultimately this bolt is still going to be stronger than the floor pan that you place it in. So basically from the top side, this is what you're going to end up with right here. And it does look like these are offset, but remember this thing had some stuff going on back here anyway. So that's where the mounts lined up from the bottom side. I drilled them from the bottom up. So at this point, we're ready for our bottom plates, and I'll get that prepared and I'll be back. So from the bottom, this is pretty much the view you're going to have. Now, it'd be real handy to have a helper, but since I'm pretty much work by myself 99% of the time, this is the way I'm going to have to do mine. So basically, you're going to set your plate on top of your bushing, or you can push it up against the floorboard and hold it. And you may be wondering why I didn't weld the bolts to the plate. Well, there's a reason for that. Serviceability comes to mind, and there may be a point where you have to remove these for whatever reason, and it just makes it a lot easier. So basically I sandwiched my second plate up against the floor as I bump this around. So our second plate's up here. Got our sway bar bracket, a washer, and a lock nut. Now, this is where it comes in handy to have a helper, because then your helper could hold all this stuff at the top while you do it from the bottom. So I'm going to have to figure out a three-handed method to do this, and I'll be back. And alright guys, what I've done, I just stuck a piece of duct tape over the top of the bolts up here. And that will at least allow me to get all this stuff started together. You know, may not be the ideal way, but this will work. So, got this one side up here. Now I got to do the other side over here. And I'm going to do that same method. I'm just going to put some duct tape on top, and I'll show y'all here in a second. Alright guys, so I am back. I'll show you the top side of that here in just a moment, but as you can see, we got our bushing here, and we got our plate here. So, with the nut started, it makes this side a little tighter, but since I put that duct tape on the top, I can literally push the studs up and then drop them back down. And then when they're like that, I can pull down slightly right here, line our sway bar mount bushing back up, I get it the way I want it to sit on there, like that. And guys, the double plate method, this is pretty much how you would upgrade to one of these rear sway bars on a 89 through 94 car, if not factory equipped, which would be every Metro does not have these. But your Swifts do. The Swift GT and GTI, I do believe, have a front and rear sway bar. Maybe Potter can chime in down in the comments and let us know 100% for sure. So, and I got all four of my nuts started. So now, at this point, we need to think about getting this stuff tightened up. And without a helper, you may be wondering how I'm going to get it tightened up. Well, generally, guys, I use the serrated nut here, which is a lock nut. what I'm going to do, I'm going to tighten these from the top side. So I'll show you that, and I'll show you how I held them bolts in there where I could get them nuts started. And we'll come back down here and we'll clean these up here in a few minutes after this other paint tags. And I will literally paint these new bolts and this sway bar bracket. And then we'll go from there. And alright guys, I'm sure you can see my little piece of tape right here. So I just took a little square of duct tape and I pushed it down on there. I'd painted these other brackets previously yesterday. So basically, how I'm going to tighten these things up is, generally I should be able just to do this right here. And sometimes it will work and sometimes it won't work. So in the cases and times it won't work, you can just generally just reach under the car until it hits that metal bracket. Tighten it down. So I don't want to cram these down too tight to the point where they're going to break the bolts. But you want it good and snug. So now basically what the bolts and plates done was reinforce the floor where the brackets were, where the old brackets were rusted off. Now you could go overboard and make these bigger. You know, I could have made a plate that fit inside here and then bolted it down that way. But I wanted to make it kind of a relatable fix. Anybody can generally make these little small brackets and do this kind of job. So got my rear sway bar mounted back, and even though it did raise it up a little bit closer to the floor, we still have plenty of clearance around everything. So guys, it's pretty simple. The worst part's going to be cleaning up your old rusty floor and removing them old brackets. Now, if you don't have the means to remove the whole bracket, you could surely take a Sawzall or something like that and just cut the protruding part off to do this. Alternately, if you're upgrading an 89 through 94 car to one of these rear sway bars off the later model, you won't have no brackets there, so this stuff will go a lot easier. So at that point, you're literally just drilling holes, making your little brackets, and, you know, boom, you got a sway bar. Because the holes are already there in all the control arms. So, pretty much, guys, this is pretty much done. So, like I said before, I am going to clean up those brackets. I'm going to spray a little paint on them. I'm not worried about getting paint on the bushings. It's not a show car. This is literally something I'm just going to drive. I just want to keep it from, you know, rotting to the ground while I'm driving it. So, if you like this kind of content, make sure that you like this video, share it with your friends, and most importantly, hit that subscribe button. It helps the channel to grow. It lets me bring you more content like this, and it keeps it up on our YouTube algorithm. So, until next time, guys, I'll see you at the next video. Thanks for watching.